How's it going, everybody? My name's Dion Morales. I'm your host of the Gold Squadron podcast.
So we're just settling in here for a little bit. Hope everybody is having a good evening. There's some tools that we're going to be working with tonight that if you are painting along, you might want to have. Make sure you have your little bowl of water. We're going to be doing lots of brush work, and we're going to be doing big brush work, so make sure you have your big brush out. I'm using the number 3. Holds a lot of paint. Going to be putting that to the test tonight. And we're going to be building ourselves a wet palette. Now, those of you that have talked to me before, I've probably talked you through how to make one, but we'll be working through that. Hey, T4 viral. Amazing, perfect spell. I'm not sure what that means. What are you trying to tell me? Perfect spell. Oh, that maybe I pronounced it right? Alright, well that's good. Alright, we'll let some people stroll in here a little bit. Looks like chat's working. So how are you guys doing tonight? How's your evening? Weekend? Did you guys have good weekends? It's finally warmed up here in the Midwest, so casting is back on Thursday. I am so sorry for canceling on you guys on our launch day for Thursdays, but it was just too cold in here. It was like 22 degrees. Man, ain't gonna have none of that. It's too cold for painting. Even with my space heater, it would have taken hours and hours for this place to have warmed up, and I would have used all my kerosene, and just won't do. Snowed here in Seattle. Yeah, I saw a couple pictures. I think I saw the pictures from Michael Reel. He was having he said it was pretty cold. So anyway, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to be doing some base coating with the brush. We'll talk about how to get smooth base coats. We're going to be using metallics tonight. So we'll talk about good metallics and how you can make the most out of those. We're going to talk about how to make a wet palette. And we're going to talk briefly about, we're going to start talking about blending and how to blend with a brush. We kind of talked about how to, like at the lowest level, how to blend with an airbrush last time. So this time we're gonna blend with a brush instead of an airbrush, because I know not all of you have or are interested in buying an airbrush, because it is a big investment. All right, so it looks like we have some people in here. It's 7:01. You know what? If you're late, you're late. So we're gonna get started here. What's up, guys? I'm Luke. Welcome to the Gold Squadron Paintcast, where we paint ships and we learn how to paint better together. So, the first thing that we're going to go over tonight is getting our equipment ready. I just happen to have needed to reset my wet palette, so let's talk about kind of the components of a wet palette, why you want one, and how to make one. So a wet palette is essentially a way to keep your paint wet for longer. This is really good in dry environments. This is really good in in times where you're going to be using the same paint over and over and over. It's a good way not to waste your paint. There are 4 components of a wet palette. The first is some sort of, I like to make my own. You can buy your own, but making your own is just cheaper. You probably already have this stuff around the house, and so you should just use it. So the first thing is a nice little Tupperware, right? This is one that I've obviously used for painting for a while, but any sort of Tupperware will do. The second thing is paper towels, right? So if you have a paper towel, oh, that's not really conducive on the camera. Here, you can look at my face cam. Paper towel, right? All I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it into thirds. Okay. Place it in there. Take a second one. And then a third one. Okay. The last thing that you need is parchment paper. Okay. Parchment paper is used in baking. You can find a wet palette, or you can find parchment paper at your local grocery store. Right, it's going to be like $3 for a huge giant roll. And if all you use it for is a wet palette, you're going to have stuff like that forever. Okay, so just cut it to size. So I already used scissors and I cut this to size, and then that will go in there. But first, we need some water. So this is just regular tap water, nothing special. You probably want it cooler rather than hot, because obviously heat is going to make your paint dry out a little bit faster. So you want the paper towels, you want them wet. Okay, they can, like, if you look here, you can see that whenever I'm pressing on them, that like I'm getting liquid, right? You can see water's kind of pooling. If you make it, the wetter you make your wet palette, the more thin your paint is going to be by the time you're finished. So the reason why is because this parchment paper is essentially just like any other paper, right? When it gets wet, water soaks through and absorbs up to here. When paint is applied up here, what's going to happen is water's going to soak through, and then your paint is slowly going to be mixing with the mixed water on this parchment paper. Parchment paper is a little waxy, so the absorption process is a little slower. So if you use regular paper on this, what's going to happen is you'd put your paint on there, and then this would get so soaked that your paint would spool out immediately. When you have just a little bit of wet, when you get a little bit of absorption through the parchment paper, you wind up having a whole lot less mixing of your paint. My wife just got me some tea. She's a wonderful lady. So when this is wet, all you're going to do is you're going to take this. I probably could have cut this down a little more, but I was doing it by eye. And there you go. You can see that this shouldn't feel wet to you. This should feel like, I don't know, right now it feels a little like cold, almost like damp, like dew almost. I don't know, kind of hard to describe. But what it does, like I showed you last time, we kind of did that test. Remember, we did that test with the brown paint up here. This is going to keep your paint alive for much longer, and that's a really good thing. Okay, so we're going to get started doing some actual painting now. So after you've built your wet palette, you want to make sure that you get your brush, right? I'm just using, well, thank you for the subscription, Feld Kaplan, subscribing for 11 months. 11 months, that's such a long time. I appreciate you. All right, so tonight we are going to work with metals. So we're going to use some metallics of varying shades, and we're going to work from dark all the way to light. We're going to kind of keep, I don't know, we're going to kind of keep this idea of this light source coming from this angle. So we're just going to be putting some bright spots in here where the light's going to come in. We're going to fade that to dark here, put some light spots here, maybe fade that to dark here, keep this a little dark. I don't know, we'll see where we go with that. This might be bright and we might just push this down. Remember, we're going to be, on Thursday, we're going to be doing a transfer. We're going to be using a stencil, a Skippy stencil that I'm going to make, and we're going to put that maybe here-ish, stick that on there, and then we'll do the same thing for the other side. This will probably be silver too, and yeah. Question: the parchment paper does not get damaged during painting. No, the parchment paper, I mean, it's just paper, right? So we're just gonna put the paint on there, and then once the paint's there, the parchment paper is the paint's gonna eventually dry on the parchment paper. You're just gonna pick up this little sheet and you're gonna throw it away. Skippy! Hello, Dion. How are you tonight? Welcome, good to see you. And hello chat and hello Twitch, or hello Twitch, hello YouTube, welcome, glad to have you in. If you guys have any interesting stories about your weekend, game related, painting related, feel free to share those stories. We'll talk about them, hang out. Painting is much more fun when it's communal, right? So as I'm talking about stuff, you guys feel free to just blather on with me and we'll have a good time. All right, so I'm gonna start off with a let's do a mid metal. So this is gunmetal. All right, so something that you want to be aware of with metallics. Metallics don't thin very well. The way that they make metallic paints is they take a gray, right? This is just gray, and then they add a whole bunch of mica flakes. Midwest Scum 57, how you doing? Welcome in. They take a whole bunch of mica flakes. Okay, mica is a little rock. It's very reflective. They take a whole bunch of finely crushed mica, toss it into this gray, mix it up, add a little additive, and boom, you got metal paint. So when you thin it, if you use airbrush thinner or other types of paint thinner, what you're really doing is you're spreading out those mica flakes. So you want to be really careful when you're thinning it, not to thin it too much, or you're going to wind up having a really, really poor metallic coat, and your metallics are going to look really dull. So if you want your metallics to stay really bright and strong, don't thin it that much. Airbrush paint, this air line is already a little pre-thinned. It's made for that. It's made to just go straight into an airbrush. But just keep that in mind when you're working with metallic paints. Okay, and then also shake your paints really good. If you haven't used the paint in a while, make sure you just shake that thing up. You want to get the paint really congealed together. Even if you're using like Citadel paints with the different bottle, just make sure that you shake that up really good. So I decided that it might look cool if we're using, so all I'm doing is I'm putting a couple drops of this gunmetal onto here. I'm going to take one. Actually, we kind of want this to be a little longer lasting, so I'm going to take this Airbrush Flow Improver. Right, Flow Improver is a retarder. So what it does is it makes the paint stay wet for longer, and so we want to give this as much working time as we can. And then the Flow Improver also thins it out just a little bit. So really good basic brush technique. Okay, you want to keep 2/3 of the way up. 2/3 of the way up. See where I got the paint? You don't want to get the paint any higher than that. When you get the paint higher than that, what happens is it gets into the ferrule right here. The ferrule is the metal handle, and then it expands. As it dries, it kind of pushes all the bristles out of the way because it's drying, and then that's how you get the bristles to start spreading and looking really bad. Let's see if I have an example of a brush. I think I only grabbed good brushes tonight, but that's okay. I'm sure that you guys know what a bad brush looks like. So part of it is maintaining good brush control and not putting the paint all the way up. Another thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is you want to make sure that you get a good tip. All you do is you take the brush, you spin and you pull. Okay, spin and pull. Okay, and that gives your brush a good tip. So if you do those two things, your painting's already going to improve. Okay. Next thing is we're just going to just cleanly kind of base coat this. Okay. And this is the good part where you guys might want to tell me some sort of story about your weekend, because we're just going to be here for a little bit The idea is that we want to keep this metallic going on as smoothly as possible. If we need to do 2 coats with the brush, we need to do 2 coats, and that's okay. Much better, much better to do 2 thin coats than 1 thick coat. Okay, painting is not a speed sport typically. Just want to make sure that you're putting all of this on as smoothly as possible. If your paint is thin enough, you're not going to see very many brush strokes. If it's too thin, you'll start to see brush strokes because you're seeing that you're not getting as good a coverage as you need to. So see, we can see the black underneath this guy already. So we're going to want to come in with a second coat. But if the paint is too thick, you're going to get really good coverage, but you're going to see brush strokes underneath. And I always like to, if we are working through different colors, I always like to start with the mid-tone. What that means is I'd like to start, if we're working from black to white, I would work with like a very neutral gray. The reason why is because with a neutral gray, it's easier to work down to black, and it's easier to work up to white. So if you start with your middle color in your range, you're going to have better success. Or at least I feel like I have better success. Beginner brush set ideas. There's lots of brushes that you can buy. If you want a detail brush, I recommend the... what do I recommend? I recommend the Winsor Newton Series 7 is what I use. They have a whole line if you're interested in. It might get a little pricey. I just recommend buying your detail brush as the Series 7. These are bomb wicks. They're Kolinsky Sables. They're from Slow Fuse Gaming. You can find those, I'll put a link here in just a second. You can find those at creaturecaster.com. They make a really nice brush. I'm pretty happy with them. I've had these, I bought these at Adepticon last year, and they've been pretty darn good. I would definitely recommend them. Slow Fuse Gaming is another painter on Twitch. He's pretty good, you can give him a like and a follow. We don't really have music, do we? Probably want to turn on some music. How many coats in total? I don't know. However many until you get a good, solid coat. Oh, I see what's going on. Okay. I had to mute the whole site in order to make sure my echo didn't go away. But we're going to be listening to some free copyright music by another Twitch artist who makes his music live on Twitch. If you're interested in this kind of synthesizer-y music, this is by a guy named Morwick. So we're watching one of his YouTube videos right now. I'll type it into chat really quick. Morwick. Okay. Also, I mentioned Slow Fuse Gaming, so on the Twitch side, he is a master painter. He's really good. He works on a lot of different things. A lot of knowledge to download. If that music winds up being a little too loud, let me know, and I will turn it down. If it's too soft, let me know, and I will turn it up. Okay, so we're just going to keep going here. And then if we do, I know that if we do, as far as brushes, we want to go to There's brushes there. Some of the brushes that I use, the bigger brushes that I use are there. And then for if you want to buy the detailed brush I was talking about, the Winsor Newton Series 7, you can find it at that link there. Oh man, all right. So you can see that I might have made my wet palette just a little too wet for what we're working with right now, but that's okay. Everything is fine. We're just gonna work through it. Just make sure that you're mixing your paints good. Alright, so metallics usually are gonna take about 2 coats, right? We're gonna get really good, we'll get good coverage on our second coat. Make sure not to touch your wet paint. Fingerprints are generally frowned upon on paint stuff. And while we're just base coating here, you know, working on smooth coats, right? If you're working on stuff at home, just make sure that you got I mean, the most important thing is that you have thin enough paint. And you'll ask, what is thin enough paint? Well, thin enough paint, in theory, from good painters, they'll tell you that thin paint is the same consistency as milk. So if your paint is the consistency of milk, then your paint is thin enough. Is that going to be the case every single time? No. Are metallics a little thicker? Yeah. So, I mean, just keep it in mind that to get a good solid coat, you just want to keep your paint literally thin, but still paintable, right? If all it's doing is just going into the crevices, then it's too thin and you've made a wash. So just keep that in mind. It's hard to it's one of those feel things, right? You'll feel it, and that takes experience and time. But you'll know what kind of paint you're comfortable with. You'll see the difference between what thick paint looks like and what thin paint looks like. And as we move forward with the painting process, this gunmetal is going to start drying, right? And so it's going to get thicker over time, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. And we just need to make sure that we keep it as good as possible for as long as possible. Once it gets too thick, it's unusable, and we want to either thin it out again or move on to a different color. Geez, y'all are quiet tonight. What is... Guys playing in any tournaments this weekend? Anything exciting going on? All right. I'm heading to a tournament tonight. Hey, Vander Legion, how you doing, man? What are you flying tonight, Vander? Bedtime in Germany, gotta work soon. We'll watch the video on YouTube. You do a great job. Looking for more to come. Thanks, Feld Kaplan. So, we definitely want to give our paint ample time to dry. It's really important that we don't probably triple epsilon. Yeah, it seems to be a list. Oh, I forgot this front portion, so let's get that really quick. Usually on ships this big, we can get away with after the first coat. By the time we get finished with the first coat, then the second coat is ready to go on the first panel that we painted, which would be this one. It looks like this might be, well, it's starting to get dry. You can see the difference in sheen, right, between here and here. And you can see we can see some. So a couple things to point out. Okay, so you can see we can see brush strokes right here. This is what we're actually seeing is that the paint is thin enough that we didn't get enough coverage for the undercoat. Right? It's not that the paint is thick, because it's not. It's nice. It's nice and thin. It's exactly the way we want it. What we're seeing is the black undercoat from the model itself. So what that's telling us is that we need to do another coat of silver. Now, if we had paint, let's see if I can actually do that here. So if you see paint like rising over the top like this, right? Yeah, or maybe like this, right? Where you can see like literal paint buildup. That means that you have too thick of a coat. And if you can see those paint strokes over too thick of a coat, that's bad. That means that your paint is not thin enough, and you need to probably work on getting that squared away before you move forward. Do I play X-Wing? I do play X-Wing. I play in the Midwest. I'm based out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I work most of the major tournament scene. I'm adequate, right? I place in regionals occasionally, but I like playing. I play in a lot of regionals, so I play in Adepticon. Let's see, I'm a reasonable player. I'm nothing special. Fort Wayne, hey Phil Sebo, how you doing, man? Evening. All right. Bought numbers 2 and 3 when they were super cheap on eBay, so why not? Speaking of super cheap on eBay, we have if you want to paint this slaver, this Trandoshan slaver. Well, I guess this is just a YV666, isn't it? If you want to paint this YV666, then head on over to Amazon. If you type in !link, it will take you to the Gold Squadron Amazon page, and they have those YV666s for $15. 15 or like 16 or something. It's really super cheap, like more cheap than you're gonna find them later. So definitely consider, if you're they got much better with the rules change, so definitely consider picking one of those up, or 2 or 3 or whatever. They may or may not be as good as the Upsilon because of collision detector, but they do have 2 crew slots and a gunner, and they have that 180-degree firing arc. So who knows? And Moralo of all is just hilarity, right? Flying off the table, flying back on the table, just silliness. Okay, so you can see here, right? Let's see. So see that shine there? We don't see any paint that's just like popping up back at us, right? Don't see that any of those. Really don't see any of those brush strokes. It's okay that we have some paint inside some of these crevices, because the paint is thin enough. It's just gonna go away here, and we'll re-mark out all of those little spots with a wash. Maybe we'll use a wash. Maybe we'll just pin wash it. Regardless, we'll get those spots, and then we do the same thing for the top. I'm just gonna give everything a nice good coat. I go back and forth between collision detector and advanced sensors. I mean, yeah, that's both are good. You know, collision detector's neat because you can just like run over rocks with impunity. It's hard to argue with large base ships not having to suffer the effects of rocks. But at the same time, large base ships that don't turn around very well, being able to bump and still have a focus action or a coordinate or whatever you need is also pretty compelling. So, okay, so as you can see, I'm out. So gotta find that gunmetal. And even though it might be a little hard to tell immediately, I'm really not using very much paint. Right? For how big of a model this is, we're not using very much paint at all. So, and it's going by pretty quickly. Don't be so as you paint. Don't be afraid to just take some time. Just be patient. It's really the most important thing about painting is just be patient. So you can see here, this is what brush strokes look like. Okay, do you see all these bubbles in the paint right here? See how it bubbles instead of shimmers? See, that's shimmering, and this is bubbling. Shimmer, bubble, right? That means that the paint is a little too thick right there, so we're just gonna spread it out a little more. And we're actually I'm gonna take a little bit of, just a drop of airbrush thinner. I'd like to try a Val properly this week. Squad with 2 mining guild ties. Any suggestions? I mean, is this for competition or for fun? Honestly, I don't think that we have enough in the meta. I don't think that we have even close to enough data on how good anything is right now. So my suggestion is take it, try it. I think that if 3 ships, 2 TIE fighters and a big ship is probably not enough. That you probably have too many points locked into something, and that you probably need to free up something for maybe a 3rd TIE fighter. I don't really have, I can't tell you, like, without really looking at your list, I can't tell you what it is. If someone wants to pop in a link for the Discord in the Twitch chat and in the YouTube chat, that would be just phenomenal. You could head on over to the Gold Squadron podcast Discord, where we have rooms filled with people who are incredibly interested in list building. They want to, they would be more than happy to tell you what you are doing and how to make your list that you are working through better. So I would really suggest going on to there, hanging out with us. It's such a good time. We also have a spot where you can post your works in progress for painting, and it's a or your finished products for painting, and you can get feedback or just show off. Because I understand, as a painter, sometimes when you finish something that you're really proud of, it's, you know, you're not necessarily interested in having people tell you like how you could do whatever it is better. You're just interested in just showing that off. If you have Instagram links, you can just post those in that gallery, right? And get more people seeing your stuff, and that's important. if you are a commission painter or just interested in becoming more involved in the community as a whole. Need to get back to painting more of my ships. Been a while. Yeah, you, Vander Legion, if you don't know, I'm almost positive that he's out of Colorado, and I think he does a, he does some good stuff. If I'm thinking about the right person, his Instagram is chock full of pretty interesting ships. Nope, Alaska. Okay, well then we're talking about a completely different person. Vander Legion is probably a horrible painter and just doesn't have anything good at all on his Instagram, and no one should go look at his painting. I'm just kidding. What's up, Mega Silver? How you doing? Right now we are brush painting some metallics onto this YV666. Getting some more color on there. So as this gunmetal dries, I think we're going to move up in color. I think, what do you think? Move up in color, down in color. Nothing amazing, but not entirely terrible. Oh, I'm sure you're fine. I was just making a joke at your expense. The most important thing about becoming a good painter is painting. So the more you paint and the more you try and like expand what it is you're painting, the better you're going to be. Okay, we're going to be using Model Air Metallic Black. This is a dark metallic paint. Oh, I wasn't talking to you necessarily, but just everyone. Just the more you paint, the more you challenge yourself, the better your painting's gonna be. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start working in a little bit of a fade here. So we're gonna start working. So what I kind of want to do, I kind of want to work this dark, have this be kind of bright, and then have this be dark. Right, kind of like our Gold Squadron. If you look right. How like the Gold Squadron is black, silver, black, right? If you look at where my brush tip is, brush, right? Black, silver, black. So black, silver, black, and then maybe black, silver, black. That might look pretty cool. So we'll put the black in these edges here, right? And all we're gonna do is we're just kind of like just chalk in our lines. Okay, at this point we're just base coating this. We don't care about blends. We just want to make sure that our colors are good. And I should be starting on this side where this is a little more dry. Actually, we're just gonna give this just a little bit of a minute. I can still see. You can still see a little bit of shine, right? Which means that it's still wet. So, do you clean or wash the Mini before starting? So last week we primed the Mini using black airbrush primer. But you don't have to. If you want to just start with the Mini, all you have to do is go take it into your kitchen, take some warm soapy water, give it a nice little scrub, and then wash it off with nice cool water, let it dry fully, and then you're ready to paint. The paint on the models is more than good enough to act as a primer. You're not going to lose paint because you had a bad prime job. But you can take primer. You can take a rattle can, or you can take airbrush primer and prime the whole model. It doesn't really matter what color, as long as you get a nice even coat on the whole model. Got a full room tonight. What's everybody up to on this Monday? Was your day at work like my day at work, where I really intended to get a whole bunch of stuff done and just wound up not getting anything done at all? That's not true. I got some stuff done, but not even close to what I was like, oh, I'm going to get this done today. Yep. For sure. Mondays are just, for me, are days of just like low expectations. Like I really want to, or failed expectations. I really want to get something complete, and just doesn't go that way. So what we have to think about as we paint in, as we block in our shadows, is how the shadows are going to react on the other side. So so we have a shadow coming down to here, right? When it comes over here, do we want that shadow to come all the way down to here? Do we want it up here? How do we kind of want this? Because we want to keep continuity between the whole thing. So we might blend this up and then try and make sure that our black is, I don't know, reaching like right here, so that it's nice and dark, right? Because even though the lights, so as the light's coming down like this, we'll actually have the brightest spot of the light be down here, and then have the shadow come up this way. And we're just working, and you know, we're just working with basic shadows right now. We're not worrying about you know, doing 2, 3, 4 different shadow elements. I'm honestly using light as kind of just a general guideline here. I'm not really worried about how it's actually going to react, because this is Star Wars, and in Star Wars, light can be whatever you want it to be. Just like the Force can be whatever you want the Force to be. Just like, you know, like you can do the coolest thing to me about Star Wars is that you can do whatever you want. It's literally a free open world that you're only limited by yourself. So we want this to come up here. And doesn't look like we have this here, so we'll just fade into like a bright spot like right there, and then we'll make this really dark. Good evening, Padre. How you doing? Felsibo had the day off. Well, that's lucky. Congratulations on the day off. If I could have every day off, I would. That sounds like a good plan. Okay, so brush goes there. All right, we're even. And you can see that I'm not doing any sort of like feathering or blending or any other technique, right? All we're doing is we're just blocking in colors. We'll come back in a little bit and we'll actually start working through a nice easy way to blend some of these models up. And all we're doing is we're trying to get it kind of close on either side. Sure, seems good. One thing we're definitely trying to avoid is getting paint on any of the places that we've already painted. So be aware that if it's not obvious, be aware that you want to keep the dark places dark and the painted places painted and the bright places bright, and try not to screw up as much as you can. It's probably inevitable that you're going to get a little bit of paint on other places. That can be fixed. It's just the less you have to fix, the easier your life's going to be. Don't you agree that Monday comes after a tournament weekend? Heck yeah, man. Like, when you spend all Saturday sitting somewhere trying to playing at a tournament, and you get home at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and all you want to do is crash, then man, that Sunday is the worst, because you're tired. You've already spent a whole weekend doing stuff. a whole day doing stuff, and now you probably got to do chores or whatever. It feels like you don't have a weekend because you actually worked. Like, you didn't do work that pays you, but you did work on a Saturday. And if you had a 2-day tournament, man, it's even more. So yeah, I feel you. I feel you. But the upside is that I super like all of you guys, and so I will take a Saturday hanging out with all my friends. Then if I have the opportunity. So we're kind of doing like some sort of like weird circle shaped thing, I guess, there. So we'll do the same thing on this side. One thing that I am concerned of in 2.0, I guess you probably don't care what I think, and that's fine. You just tune this out then. I am super concerned about all of the spam lists, right? Like, I'm concerned about if there's on the next big event. I hope that the lists that we see aren't, oh, I'm just taking 3 of this ship, or I'm just taking 3 of this ship, right? Because we see like 3 Epsilons, and you know, we see some mining guild ties or whatever, and we see some TIE fighters, but we don't usually see like a whole bunch of the same thing just in mass over and over and over. And so I hope we don't. Jedi Knights for the win. Let's hear that. Blending is a big thing that I need to learn how to do. All my paint jobs right now are just basically just solid colors in different parts. Yeah, well, we're going to be talking about that here. So we went with the darkest color, right? We did that metal black. So now we're going to go with a really bright color. We're going to be going with chrome. Chrome. I had a lot of fun last month at the tournament with 2 Seeks, 2 Mining Guild ties, a Gun Runner, and an Escape Craft. Nice. You don't see Seeks on the table very often. I mean, Alaska probably has a pretty distinct meta all of its own, so I wouldn't make the assumption that that it's always the same as the national meta, but said you were going to fly triple Epsilon, so I guess that's probably something. 2 Seeks, 2 Mining Guild ties. See, that's a lot of things on the board. I like that. Okay, remember, keep that. You can see this really cleanly now. Okay, make sure that your paint doesn't get up inside the ferrule of the brush. Just keep it out there. Okay, so now we're going to paint in, since this is a really bright color, we're going to paint in the brightest spots, and we're just going to block that in. Okay, maybe you're seeing where I'm going with this now. We just want to block in all of the colors so that we have a really good idea of where we need to blend to. Okay, keep your paint your paint thin. Right? Can you do this with an airbrush? Absolutely. Can you do this easier with an airbrush? Most definitely. So if you're learning an airbrush, the same thing is going to apply. You're going to apply your dark areas, you're going to apply your light areas, and then you're going to take your midtones and you're going to start blending those in. We're using it with a brush tonight because not everybody has an airbrush, and not everybody wants to learn an airbrush, right? Additionally, there is a really good argument to be made that relying on an airbrush too much, like if you don't understand how to blend and you don't understand the reasons why you do that, you're just harming yourself, right? Because you can't just airbrush things. You can get close, but you can't fully get you can't fully airbrush any single model and expect to have amazing results. You can have good results, but with combined, when their powers combine, you get a really nice finish. So it's good to know how to do the brush work, even if you don't use it all the time. It's good to know how to do the the airbrush work, because we don't do it all the time. Interesting. Okay, so we have a kind of a little dilemma here. So if you see here, these have the same paint lines, and I painted this one to have conflicting paint lines. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and we're actually just going to paint the chrome over the top of it. Okay. You can see that we're kind of blending a little bit with where the dark was. Then I'll paint the dark here, and then we'll just kind of, when we work in our blends, we'll work in the mid-tone again. We definitely do indeed have a distinct meta. Still don't see Seeks much. Moran Sarasu for the defensive rerolls. Sunny have Seavor, Gunrunner with Pattern Analyzer, Outer Rim Pioneer, so others can shoot from rocks with Tactical Officers. Trick Shot. Yeah, Mega Silver. Mega Silver is a thing. He likes Seeks. I want to try a couple out. 3X, 2Y is probably going to be a thing. So, if you guys are just tuning in, welcome. We are painting the silver on a custom YV666 from the Star Wars X-Wing range. I'm Luke. I am the host of the Gold Squadron Paintcast, and I appreciate you guys being here. If you're enjoying the stuff that you're seeing, and you haven't already, and you're on Twitch, you should go up and press that follow button. It's in your upper right hand corner of your screen. So just go ahead and press that if you wouldn't mind. I'd appreciate that. Additionally, if you are interested in supporting the Gold Squadron podcast, which is the patron of the Gold Squadron Paintcast, you can do that in a number of ways. Bye, Padre. Have a good night. You can do that in a number of ways. You can go on to patreon.com and go to the and type in Gold Squadron Podcast, and that will come up with Gold Squadron. You can subscribe to any one of the tiers. You get really cool stuff like alt art cards, other things like that. Super awesome. If you can also if you're on Twitch, you can also hit that subscribe button. You get some cool emotes. You get a little badge next to your name and all sorts of cool stuff, right? We do sub giveaways during tournaments and just a ton of things that Dion knows a lot more about. Like, he gives all sorts of stuff away. He does a lot of stuff for the community. If you're on YouTube, you can hit that like button on my right there. Just hit that like button. Just be like, yeah, I like this Paintcast. And then you can, if you haven't already, can hit subscribe. That way that when a new video pops up, you can be like, oh yeah, I can see it. And it'll just pop up for you. And that's a good thing. Let's see, what else? Patreon, subscription. You can go onto Facebook. Give us a follow. I assume you've already done that. But Facebook, Gold Squadron Podcast. Hit that follow button. Also, jump on our Discord. I don't know if someone has put up a link to the Discord yet. But if someone wants to put up a link to the Discord, then you can definitely see all of the other stuff that we're kind of working on. And you'll get to talk with the rest of the community. I don't know. That's all I got. So, affiliate link for that airbrush. Yeah. Boom. No one in YouTube has chatted. Everybody in YouTube's like, nope. Nope, we're quiet tonight. Being super quiet. Alright. So here we are. Right? This is looking pretty rough, right? We got three kind of distinct bands. We have our really dark band, we have our gunmetal band, and then we have a really bright band. So what we want to do is we want to work brightest into darkest. Okay, and there's a couple ways that we can do this. The first way is called layering, and that's kind of that's the easiest way to perform blending. Layering is, we're going to move over to the wet palette here, is literally mixing paint so that we get just a brighter tone. So if we have this silver here, we have this silver here. So we have three things of chrome here. Oh, that's a little bit of airbrush thinner there. We're going to take some of this gunmetal. We're just going to mix it just a little bit. Okay. Take this. Okay. I do suggest that because there's metallic flakes in it, that if you use a separate water pot. I like to just do all my metallics in one night, in one go. So for paint. So if for whatever reason you are doing regular colors and metallic colors all in one night, I just recommend using 2 different cups of water. That way, and 2 different brushes. That way you don't mistakenly get metallics in one brush and wind up having some odd looking colors. So all I'm doing right here is I'm just making different color paints. Right. I want to work on getting the whole gambit of colors. Right. So I have the chrome. I want to get just a little bit of I want to get just a darker metallic and a darker metallic and a darker metallic. Director Tulsi. Yeah. Twitch TV, Gold Squadron Podcast. Yep, that's where we're at. How you doing? Director Tulsite. Okay. So now that we have, so you can see we have our bright chrome, we have like a darker chrome, we have a darker chrome, we have like more of a dark metal here, we have our actual gunmetal, which is our mid-tone that we were using, and we have darker, darker, darker. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start taking like this tone. We're just going to do just a little portion of it right here. Just going to take this. Almost feels a little too, there we go. Okay, and then we get a lot of that off our brush, and then we go to the next color. And if it's still pretty wet, we can just kind of sneak in a little bit of a darker tone here. And then sneak in a little bit of a darker tone here. if you get the paint off your brush and the paint is still wet, right, because we were using that flow improver, you can just kind of work. See how I'm taking off the paint off the brush, and then after I put some wet paint on, and I'm just kind of like working the paint back in there. And once you can get your mid-tone here again, right, when we're here, and we can kind of work that in. And then we work a little brighter, right? And then we work a little brighter. We go back to our original chrome color, wipe off the paint a little bit, and then we just kind of just. And you can see right here, we have a pretty nice progression, right? Or at least the start of a really nice progression. Blending is a lot of work and a lot of just like kind of just struggling with it. You just kind of have to keep saying, okay, I know this is my mid-tone. I'm going to put some mid-tone on there, right? And I'm going to get a good blend right here with the chrome. So I'm going to put some chrome on here and make that wet. And then I'm going to get some of this paint off, and then I'm going to work into the chrome. This chrome feels pretty wet here, so you get a kind of a good color that you're happy with. Start working it up into the higher areas, you know, and then work your mid-tone back in. This is just a process, right? You're just gonna keep kind of pushing paint around. This is literally called wet blending. As you're layering stuff in, when you get to this specific process, where you have a bunch of wet paint and you're blending them together, get it? It's called wet blending. And almost always it's a good idea to put your dark color in first, not like I just did, and then put your mid-tone in, or your lighter tone in, and then work your lighter tone into your darker tone. You'll almost always get better results when you push into your darker tone. So just kind of keep an eye on that. And the more you practice with this, the easier it's going to be. But remember, you don't have to get it all perfect on your first pass, right? There's plenty of room for another technique that we're going to use called glazing. And what glazing is going to do is it's going to clean out a lot of these layer lines, right? We can glaze with our airbrush, and we might do that just to make things a little easier on us. But we can I'll show you how to glaze with the regular brush. So we're gonna mix this up. Gonna put this down here. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of ignoring chat right now. We'll be with you guys in just a minute. Kind of just working this blend in. And because I'm working with wet paint, I just can't. I'm having a little bit of issue staring at you guys. Dreaded Spectre 1, subscribe with that Twitch Prime. Thanks a bunch, buddy. You are a gentleman, scholar, all of the things. Thank you for supporting the Gold Squadron podcast, and thank you for supporting me. I am really enjoying this Twitch thing. It's so much fun to paint, put some knowledge on y'all. I like it so much, and so I appreciate you thinking that I'm doing a good enough job that this show is worthwhile to actually spend your sub on, to put your Twitch subscription on, because you know what, we only get one of those Twitch subscriptions a month, and so the fact that you want to use it here is just so cool. Thanks a bunch. And blending, especially blending like this, is a distinct, you get what you put into it. So you put a bunch of time and thought into how your blend is going to go, your blend is going to come out better. And this is still pretty bright, so I want to tone this down just a tad. So I'm going to take our mid-tone, put it on here just a little bit. I think I only want just like a little bit of brightness, or not as thick of a chrome line, right? So we'll push this into the brighter areas, kind of feather it down. Okay, and so you see how long we're working on this. Okay, again, this is a patience thing. Don't feel like just because you didn't get it right on your first go, on your first pass, that you're bad at painting or you're never going to get it. This is not that. Painting is not that kind of thing. You just kind of have to keep folding in. You know, don't make sure your paint's thin. Make sure you're doing what you need to do to have. To give yourself the chance for the best results. But don't feel like you can see how much I'm working at this. Don't feel like you need to just, like, if you don't get this perfectly right, that you're not a good enough painter. It would be sweet to see the blending in hyperspeed. Well, I would suggest, if you want that you rewatch the YouTube video a little bit when it gets posted, and just set that speed up to like 3 or 4, and then you'll see me working this blend. I'm not going to work all the blends. I will do that off camera for you guys, because I know that although interesting, it's not the most interesting. And I'll make sure that we film it and it gets put up there. But for now, let's see. So I'm just kind of pulling the blend in. I just kind of want to show you what one blend kind of looks like as we're working it in. Right. So you see how it's just one of these things that you just need to just kind of just keep. And so we're just layering stuff, right? We're taking thin layers of paint, and we're just kind of putting layers on. And at the same time, we're taking wet paint, We're just kind of trying to blend it in to get a good mid-tone between those two blends, or between those two colors. And this can be done literally with any two colors. The closer they are, the easier it's going to be to blend. Okay, so we got a reasonable blend going on here, right? We see one line. I see one line like right here. That's a really distinct sharp edge. But like this one, we have a nice little gradient that's going on, and that's exactly what we want. So we're gonna fix this little part, and then we'll work on glazing out. The parts we don't really like. All right, we'll glaze out those brush strokes to make them so that they're a little cleaner. So anywhere you see that, like a super change in color, you're like, oh man, that's definitely where that line, that line starts or ends. That's where you want to kind of put in your bright color, put in your next color, and then kind of like work those two together. This works really well on really big surfaces like this YV666 panel. It works less good on small, like if you're going to do this on like an Imperial Assault figure, you're going to get less good results. You'll still get fine results, but they'll just be less good. It requires a lot more. There's different techniques that you want to use for a for a smaller figure, and we can talk about that, not tonight, but we can talk about that later. Oh, that's still there. Man, I put that paint is just on so thick, or that chrome just covers so brightly, it covers so well that it's really hard to build a blend up from that chrome. Seems like a lot of people are busy painting, which is awesome. How much of the brush tips touch the model with each stroke? Well, let's see. I guess, man, that's kind of a hard question. I probably only have that much of the brush tip hit. So like half, I guess, is how much I have. I'm not dragging it really far, right? I'm just pushing single pieces in there. Thanks for the question, Dion. Hopefully you're painting too. Dion is secretly like the best at everything. He's secretly a master painter and secretly like, top-notch podcaster, orchestra teacher. He's just all about everything. And he's like, if you ever seen like Touched by an Angel, like he's just here to help us become like the people that we need to be. Ah, okay, here we go. This is a better blend. So I moved the chrome down just a little bit. Running. Dion is running. See? That's what I'm saying. Like, running, learning, watching a paint cast video, man. Just everything that we wish we could be. Well, the music that we're listening to tonight is by a Twitch caster. And that is not conducive to running, but it's still pretty good. So, let's see what... that's what she said. When my airbrush comes, I'm gonna come over and get some tips. Alright. Touched by an Angel reference. Nice. Yeah. Okay. So, that in a nutshell is how you blend with a brush. And hopefully by watching me do it, you have a pretty good idea of kind of like how you do it. So basically, let's go over this. They still make those shows? I super don't think so. So let's go over this once again, just to kind of show, to walk through what we did. So we had a dark tone, a mid-tone, and a light tone. We blocked in with our mid-tone the whole thing. Then we set in our dark tone, set in a dark tone, and then we put our light tone in the center of this. What we did then is we made our mid-tone wet. We pushed our mid-tone into our dark tone by just putting some wet dark tone here and then mixing them together, right? And slowly just working them so that they're a single color. We did the same thing with the light. We pushed it into the mid-tone and started mixing them together, slowly worked them. The more practice that you have at this, the better and faster you're going to be. With a brush, I am by far not even close to the fastest painter doing these kind of blends. But it is good to know, and it's really good to practice. So even if you have an airbrush and you're working through stuff, don't be afraid to spend some time to actually take out your brush and work through this. We're going to work through kind of a glazing method of how to make this blend just the slightest bit better here in just a little bit. We're going to let this guy fully dry though. I want to make sure that this is not wet at all, so that when we glaze it, that it gets put that none of the paint gets wet blended again. Glazing is a method of taking a single really thin tone and putting like a tint over the whole thing. And by putting a tint over the whole fade, basically we get it'll clear out these errant brush strokes that we have. So we can still see this line just a little bit right here, and I don't think that's a huge deal. It's not a huge deal to me. We kind of have good blending here. Actually, what am I saying? I definitely want this to go away, because gotta do things right. So we're putting our mid-tone, we're putting the dark tone on first. Okay, taking the paint off. Then we're going to our brighter tone. Okay, taking the paint off, and then we're slowly working the brighter tone into the mid-tone. The reason that we do it this way and not work the mid-tone into the brighter tone is that the darker tone will really drastically overpower the light tone. So you want to make sure that that as much as possible. And for this line, we actually might need some mid-tone overpowering the dark tone. But as much as possible, you want to make sure that you're working towards dark. We just got. Okay, I'm just using just the tip of my brush, and I'm just doing like little tiny circles. Sometimes when other things don't work, making little tiny circles with your brush will blend enough paint that you can get away with it. That you can get away with a reasonable blend. And if you're noticing, I'm still going back with this dark tone, right? Again, and I'm just working all of that blend back. Ah, man, we still have this line. Oh boy. I'm just not having great success here getting this line to go away. So you see that dark just pushed up over into that. So we're just gonna push that back. There we go. a little better. A little better. Not perfect, but it's definitely getting there. So you can see that that line is much, we can't see that line nearly as much, right, compared to that line, right? This blend, much nicer than just setting paint colors in. And notice that we're doing all of this with just a brush, right? Don't need any fancy tools. I've only used one brush tonight. Like, literally I've used a single brush to block all of this in. So don't feel like because you can't afford the fancy schmancy airbrush or tools or anything like that that you aren't able to paint or compete at or do really cool or effects. Anything that can be done with an airbrush can be done with a brush. It just requires a little more work, and that's okay. Because at some point, I promise that it's gonna be that you're going to get to the point where you're gonna be painting something and you have to do it, and you're like, man, a blend would look so good here, but you just can't fit the airbrush in there. It's just not gonna work. You just think to yourself, man, there's just no way that I'm gonna get the airbrush in there. And if that's the case, and you don't know how to blend it with a brush, you're pretty SOL. So it's good to have a really nice understanding of how to layer things up and get in a position where you can succeed with any of the tools that you have. And at the end of the day, your brush is your main tool. Like, the brush is it. You can have an airbrush, but if you don't know how to use your actual brush, you're done. Not gonna lie, seeing someone as skilled as you correcting mistakes makes me feel a bit better about dealing with my own. I'll tell you what, man, I make a lot of mistakes. There's zero. People that like know me in real life, when I talk to them about painting, I tell them pretty much the same thing that I'm going to tell you guys now, is that painting well is more a function of fixing the mistakes and issues that you have than it is painting just excellently. Because anybody can learn to paint excellent. It's the ability to take feedback from people, be able to look at your work and say, man, I still need to fix X, or I still need to fix Y, or this doesn't look just right. That's what really separates good painters from people who are really amateur. Someone who's willing to just go, yep, this is good enough, and just slap on paint. That's a much different painter than someone who wants to really compete and really do well. And so you can see that I'm just like taking, see how far I took that? I took that silver and I pushed it all the way up. And the more that you do that, the more that the better your blend is going to be. And you can see that we got a really nice blend. We have a little bright spot and we have this nice blend of dark. We can actually take a little bit of dark now and put it back here and kind of work. If we want to work back, you can work carefully, and you can work carefully back so that we have a little darker edge, right? So we just take our black and we just kind of. But I appreciate the comment, Machete. So there we are. We got that one done. Are y'all bored of seeing how this blending goes? I'm really still kind of concerned about this little area right here. I don't know why it's bothering me so much, but it is. Like, I need to get this fixed. So bear with me. I wish when I said bear with me that like a little like animated bear would come out and be like, give me a hug. I think that's really what Twitch is about. Animated bears asking for hugs. So maybe that was it. Maybe I think my chrome paint, where I was pulling my chrome paint from, might have been a little thin. And so I wasn't getting a good area to blend on. And now that I did, I'm feeling a lot better about that, right? And so, yeah, it's just a matter of going back over and over with blending. This is a blending thing. This isn't necessarily an ever painting thing. This is just keep going back to keep knowing what picture in your head you're looking for, and keep going back and working towards it. It's just a little darker, so I'm gonna put in the dark and then blend it in. All right. Okay, well, let's take just kind of a short little break. Let's talk about kind of where I think I want to go as we finish off the blend, as we work through all the blends on all this stuff. As I said, who was it? Chillin' guy 85. He's like, nah, man, I don't want you blending all this crap on stream. That's boring. I don't want to see the work of the painting. I just want to see you work through it real quick. So, as I said, I'll get through all these blends. I'll record the video, and we'll get that put up on the YouTubes, and you guys can watch it. You can set it to 1 speed, and I'll talk you through the whole blending process and how I'm doing. Or you can set it to like hyper speed, set it to mute. Watch me just fly through these blends. I'll look like a wizard. It'll be great. As we go on, though, what we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want to paint engine glow here, right? Because we're Gold Squadron, right? And we're painting kind of a Gold Squadron YV666. We're gonna be painting this blue. Engine glow is gonna be nice and blue here. I don't know what these are. I think they're supposed to be like exhaust ports, but this makes it look like a steam train in space, which is super dumb. But we'll paint this maybe a little bit blue. We'll do a little engine glow or something like that. And then we have Skippy to paint right here, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go on the computer. I'm going to go into Adobe Illustrator, take Skippy, make him an outline, and save him as an SVG file. I'm just talking to the people who are understanding what I'm saying right now. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, don't worry about it. Then I'm gonna send him out to my little stencil cutter, and I'm gonna get a nice computer cutout that's just this size. It's gonna be in vinyl, right? And we're gonna put that on. And then we're gonna spray in Skippy, and then we're just gonna paint in all of his Force Ghost stuff, right? We're gonna paint in all of his like the top of his head and his little eyeball and stuff like that, and it's gonna look super cool. We'll do that on that side. If we might do Skippy on this side, maybe Gold Squadron, maybe the Gold Squadron logo. I don't know. Well, something. We'll see. And then we got the front windows, and I think the front windows can probably be red. I kind of think red on this gold is going to look really, really, really cool. And we don't want to make it look like they're inside the engine, so we don't want to make this blue. But yeah, so we'll definitely be done on Thursday. And and I'm gonna what we're doing right now is we're really just letting this thing dry so I can walk you through what glazing looks like, and how to make a good blend. All right, but for now, let's do, because we have like five or so minutes. Let's do some question and answer period. Anybody have any questions that you want to ask at all? It can be related to, yeah, it will be sweet, chilling guy. It will be freaking sweet. Any questions that you have at all, just feel free to toss those out. If I can answer them on stream, I'll do that. I have like a little TIE fighter, or a little TIE defender that we can do some Q&A on. If you're like, I want to see what this technique looks like, or what would you do with this, or what's your favorite color? I don't know. So, anyway, if you guys have any questions you want to ask them, feel free. If not, we're gonna just sit here for a couple minutes and look dumb. And that'll be that. I'm sure we'll get super lots of views when we're looking dumb like this. Favorite first order squad after points and null nerf. From Darth Revan 1979. So how do you get clean lines painting TIE panels? Oh, okay. So favorite first order squad after points and null nerf. Honestly, I really have no idea. I mean, I really think Kylo is gonna is top notch. I think that an Upsilon is really good. Which Upsilon? I don't know. Okay, so like here's the thing. I really want I think an Upsilon and Kylo are still really strong. Are they as good as 3 Upsilons? Probably not. Are they gonna die a bunch? Probably. Is Kylo and Blackout pretty good? Maybe. I don't know. I wish that the SF was a little better. I'm feeling a little like sad about the SF not working very well. I haven't had very good luck with it. I don't think that it doesn't have anywhere close to enough mods for what it really needs. Like QuickDraw is like suffering for not having enough mods. But so the answer is, I wish I knew, because if I knew, then I would know what I need to paint, so I know what I could fly. All right, let's do TIE panels really quick. So we're gonna let's do red, and let's do the TIE panel in a nice brown, so we can really see the difference. Actually, maybe we'll do it in like a white gray. Let's do the panel. Let's make this kind of like a Imperial Ace. Okay, so how do we get clean lines in the panel? First, you want to make sure your paint is properly thinned. So I'm just going to put a drop. This is Model Color White Gray. Just going to put a drop of that. I'm going to put a little bit of airbrush thinner. Right? Little 1-to-1 ratio there. I'm going to take my paintbrush, mix it up. Okay. Again, thin paint. See this consistency? Nah, I can just move it anywhere I want. Okay. We have to get our paintbrush loaded appropriately. So pull. So turn and pull. Okay, till you get a nice tip on your brush. And then all you do is you're just painting in your panels, right? Okay. If your paint is thin enough, you can just kind of work up to the sides of the panels, and you can be pretty perfect. TIE panels aren't hard to kind of paint in the lines, but we might be painting this panel, and oh, okay, we got this. Okay, you might have this little overlap there. Then we bring in our second color. Are Citadel dry paints worth it for dry brushing? Sure, if you like, if you understand dry brushing well enough that I mean, dry brushing is pretty easy. We're not going to do it tonight because my dry brush is in the other room. But if you understand dry brushing, yeah, they work. I've definitely used them before. I like them. The Xandri, or not Xandri dust, but whatever, like the bone colored dry paint is just phenomenal for weathering tanks and other things like that. It has a really good dust quality, like the bone color. Okay, we get our paint really thin, do our little pull, okay, and we're off to the races. Okay, paint over. Okay, we're getting a little bit of bleed, right? Because our paint's kind of thin. And I'm assuming this is the question that you're asking. How do you paint like this and not get it all over the place like I am? So I'm going to posit you a question of, why don't you just do this and then go back and fix your mistake? Right? Take as small of a brush as you need with nice and thin paints. And this paint is wet, right? So we're gonna get kind of a pinkish color, but you understand what I'm going for here, right? Go back and just fix your mistakes over and over and over. Like, if we got rid of all the stuff on our brush, we could pick up all of the red paint, right? We're working with really wet paint here, so you could pick up all the red here that bled in. I just wipe it off on my thumb because whatever. Okay. Okay, pull. Okay, and just go back and fix your mistakes. That's literally all painting. How do you get clean lines? You try really hard, and when you fail, you go back and fix your mistakes. Being a good, skilled painter is nothing more than being fast, right? Because you have enough brush control and enough understanding of how the paint's going to work and where the paint's going to go that you can make better decisions initially with how you do stuff and where stuff is going to end up. Beginning painters, if you wanted to make something really good, you can make something. You can make a something that is competition level good. All you have to do is just paint a little more slowly, take a little bit more time, think about what you're doing, and go back and fix your mistakes more. But that's all. That's pretty much all it is. It's just going to be going back and forth and fixing your stuff. Pretty much that's where I had the most trouble, and that's pretty much what I did the best I could do. Then went back to white to fix the mistakes. Just was hard fixing the white paint over the dark blue I was using for the rest. Okay, so if you need to work up to white, one, you can see that my white that I'm using is pretty opaque. This Citadel model color has a pretty good coverage area. But if you're not happy with that, then I would suggest going this is Citadel Cold Gray, but all it is it's kind of a neutralish gray. All you have to do is just put a little bit out there, and instead of going with white, right? You are with white over black, you instead put your gray out there first, right? And I didn't thin this gray down at all, but you know, if we were seriously painting this, you would want to thin your gray down just a little bit so that it flows into the panels a little bit easier and has a little bit better coverage. And then after you put your gray on, then you go back to your white, right? And you paint your white in. And you layer up that way. You don't have to start with your brightest coat. You can work up to your coats by putting on gray. At least in white's case, right? And if you're working up with orange, you know, if you're trying, oh, this thing's going to be orange, paint it red first. Orange is a horrible color. It's gonna take a lot of work to put it up. Start with a light brown if you're gonna put orange on. You know, it depends on how like intense you want to make it, but it's easy enough to just work your layers up in increments. Usually when I go to a bright red, so like this guy right here, right? This guy on this stripe started off as a dark red, and then we blended it up to a light red, right? Super, super bright, right? I didn't start with a light red and go down to a dark red. I started with a dark red and went to a light red because the dark red gets the initial coverage on, and then you can kind of brighten it up. Have I painted a shadow caster? Yeah, I painted a shadow caster. I'm putting in a link for you. If you guys go here, maybe I'll make this a command at some point. That's my Instagram. If you want to see stuff that I have worked on, that I am working on, feel free to check me out. The stuff that I do on the Paintcast is by far not even close to the stuff that not all the stuff that I'm painting at the time. So feel free to just kind of do whatever. Give me a follow. Give me some hearts or something, or don't. But I think I have a shadow caster or two on there, something like that. Okay, so we have this we have this here, and now it's finally, I think we're finally dry, right? I don't see any spots on there, but you can see brush strokes on there. We can see that this blend is not perfect. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take kind of a mid-tone, and I think I might mix the steel and gunmetal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make what's called a glaze out of it. Now, super real truth here. I've never made a glaze out of metallics before, so I have no idea what's going to happen. But we're going to do it live because why wouldn't we do it live? This is too much fun. The last thing I'm going to use is what's called Glaze Medium. Okay, you can find this at any of your paint stores or whatever. It's what Glaze Medium is. It is paint that that's a little bit thinner. That's not going to break down the paint. So when you put airbrush thinner or water in, right, all you're doing is you're spreading out all of the paint. So eventually you're going to get more water than paint, and when you paint it on, it's going to just run right into the recesses. Glaze Medium is just a little bit thicker, and so when it spreads out the paint and you paint it on, it's still going to give you a nice coverage, even though it's really thin. So usually you want less than 50% paint to Glaze Medium. So we put in 3 drops here, so I'm going to put in 3, 4, 5. 5 drops of Glaze Medium. And we're going to just see how this works. Because usually, like I told you before, usually you don't really want to thin out your metallics too much. Okay. So, pro tip here. When you're trying stuff out for the first time, don't do it on the thing that needs to be done. Right? Start on something that is a little that's less obtrusive, right? Because if this happens like this, you can see that although there is a glaze happening, although we're getting a tint, like, man, it is brightening everything up so much. Like, look at this. This is crazy. This is super, super, super bright. And I'm just blowing on it to kind of see how it dries. Well, this might be okay. I'm going to thin it out maybe. I'm going to use a little more glaze medium and thin it out just a little bit more. I think if it's just a little bit thinner, it's gonna go on good. But you can see what it's doing already here. You can see that it's kind of doing like a really, really thin coverage over everything. And it's taking your eye off of these crazy lines, right? So we're just gonna kind of put it in the place where the color goes. So this is where the kind of the bright silver is, right? And we're just kind of gonna glaze right over the top of that. And I think the less glaze we use on this one, the better. Sometimes when you're using like regular glazes on color, you can be pretty heavy with your hand on the glaze. Like with blues and stuff, glazes don't tend to be so rough, but this one, man, this is pretty thick. We're gonna wind up brightening the crap out of this black, which is okay, because we can come back in with a shade and shade everything down, and that's no big deal. But man, glaze medium makes your life a whole lot easier when you're doing these blends, and I do strongly recommend picking some up, because what you're gonna see here is how much cleaner this blend is now. Yeah, it's brighter, right? Definitely brighter. But there's lots, and it's really wet right now, right? Glaze medium takes a while to dry. But it takes away a lot of that, a lot of those extra brush strokes that you have. And I'm not sure right now that I'm going to recommend it for metallics, but it seems to be working well enough that I don't really have a problem. Right? It takes away those brush strokes and gives us a little bit of a cleaner look. The last thing that we're going to do tonight is we'll let that dry, and then we'll do a big wash on top of it. I think because we want to knock down the gleam, like because it's pretty bright, I think we want to knock down the gleam a little bit. We'll put a black wash on top of it. It'll run into all the crevices, and then as long as we put it on really, really consistently, it's gonna look really nice. Hey, Lucas Wilkie, just hopped on. Silver looking good. Can't wait to see Skippy. Skippy's gonna be on Thursday. We're gonna get him on Thursday night. Okay. I apologize. Got to pull out my big paint case and find the appropriate wash. Yeah. I own an early Luke Carrington Shadowcaster that he loves. Funny story about that. So, I painted up this Shadowcaster, and it's like red, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to try and do like this like orange fiery like bird on the front of it. Oh man, it came out, and I originally I had him because I was doing the like in 1.0 right at, I don't know, wave, like right as the wave of the Shadowcasters came out. There was a build that a couple people in Australia were doing that was like this double Shadowcaster build. Like it was like Ketsu and Asajj would be like flanking, and Ketsu would be just ramming in there trying to get the tractor beam thing off. And so I painted one blue and white Shadowcaster that had like this like bird on it. It was like ice, and then I painted this other like red and orange Shadowcaster that was like fire. And it turned out that I couldn't fly the Shadowcasters. That build saved my life, and so I was like, I don't need two Shadowcasters. So I handed one of those ships off to I think Pascal for the Windy City Squadron. And I gave him this big old Shadowcaster for prize support. And the Windy City Squadron's up in Chicago, and apparently Dion won this ship, and he's like, oh, I love it so much. And I'll tell you what, like after looking at it like 6 months after I painted it, I hated it. And the more that I look at it, the more that I hate it, right? Like, I'm sure somewhere you can find a picture of it, but man, not by me. I will not even like look at that ship at all. That thing is terrible. And I don't know. As you paint, you may or may not find that that's the case with you. Like me, like I'll paint something and I'll be like, yeah, that's okay, and I'll like it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, and then I'll hate it. I hate every single thing that I've painted, but you may be like that, and that's okay, right? The reason that I hate it is because I see all the mistakes in it, and I see what I could have done better, and I know like that it's finished, right? And that I could spend the rest of my life going back to the same models and keep painting them and paint them better and better and better and better and better. But we learn by having different experiences. So for me, I'm going to finish a model, learn what I can from it, see those mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and move on to the next model, right? And so you might be a person who's like, yeah, I love all the paint jobs that I did because I put my heart and soul into them and I can see myself in them, right? And that's super awesome. And I wish I was like you, but I'm not. And so, anyway, long story short, I hate all the paint jobs that I've done. And if you see something of mine that I've done that you're like, I really have to have that, I would probably be willing to sell it to you. There's almost nothing that I own that I'm like, nope, that's mine. You can't have it. I love the Shadowcaster you gave to Mike Jones. I don't know the theme behind it, but it's amazing. Yeah. I gave Mike Jones a Shadowcaster that I like painted, that I like made in fire, right? I used green stuff. I was just practicing fire on green stuff, and so I made a Shadowcaster that was like enveloped in flames, and it was pretty cool. But again, it has some major issues and flaws, and I kind of hate it. So one thing that you can do if you're working on glazing, you're working on blending, and you want things to go faster, is you can take your airbrush, or you can take a hair dryer, right? And take your model and just give it some air. Right, a hair dryer is nicer because it has more heat, right? And what heat does is lends itself to better evaporation, right? So the more humidity that's in the air, the more just everything, right? That's around where you're at. The more so if you're living like Colorado, like in a dry climate, this is gonna dry really fast. If you're painting in the really, really cold winter time, then this is gonna dry pretty fast. If you're painting in the summer when it's 100% humidity and really hot, then it's going to dry slower because it can't evaporate into the air. So just think about, you can think about that when you're blending, right? That sometimes there's a better time of year for blending than not blending. And so but anyway, you can always just take your airbrush, if you have one, or a hairdryer, or some other form of air conveyance, right? And not too hard, because you don't want to, if there's wet paint, you don't want to accidentally push it, right? But you can just kind of move it back and forth. Dang, I just got a Shadowcaster and iFly Assage with 2 mining and a tug. 1, 2, 3 with the list. That's awesome. Just because I'm not good at something doesn't mean it's not good. Like, don't feel like anything that I say that's X-Wing related is you should take as gospel, right? Ooh. Got some synthesizer. Because what you want to make sure that, like, when you're playing X-Wing, you got to find what's right for you. I mean, there are some in 1.0, at the end of 1.0, there were lists that were good, right? That were just better than what you could come up with, right? You could try and figure out, like, how to do something, right? Like, Tom Buis is pretty good at that. He's in Fort Wayne. He did pretty good at Gen Con a couple of years ago. But you can come up with a list that is good. And then you can practice that list a ton. And then you can do good with that list. But you can also do what I did at the end of 1.0 and just say, hey, what should I fly? And someone says, oh, fly Ray and Lauric. That's really good. And I did. And that turned out to be really good. Was that because I was a great player? No. That was because that list was really good and I was an all-right player. Right? So, but in the middle of 1.0, I was flying Quick Draw, Backdraft, and Omega Leader, right? Why? Because it felt good to me. Because I liked it. And and I was having success with it because I was having fun. Remember, X-Wing is about fun. X-Wing is not always about winning. You should want to win. You should want to have fun. But if it's the chance between I'm going to fly this list that I hate because it wins, and I'm going to fly this list that I might not win with and I'm having more fun, you should always have more fun. You only have so many Saturdays in your entire life. Have the most fun on all of the Saturdays that you can. Right? Anyway, that's my 2 cents. We're going to use Army Painter Quick Shade Dark Tone. Okay? These Army Painter Quick Shades are phenomenal. They're so good. They're the best. Okay? I'm going to posit right now that they are the best washes that you can buy. The Games Workshop ones are nice. These are just better. Okay? So if you have Nuln Oil, use it, right? We're using a black shade because black on metal works. It works way better than brown on metal, right? If you're painting skin tones, you should use brown. You should use a light brown, something like that. If you're painting yellows, yellows or reds, you should use a brown. If you're painting blues, you should probably, I don't know, use like a brown or a black, I guess. That's your choice. I'm kind of thinning it down with some airbrush thinner, and all we're going to do, because we want to get an even coat, or because we want to tone all of this down just a hair, we're just going to put this in the recesses, or we're just gonna run this all the way through. Okay. This is a good scenario to use your airbrush in. Okay, if you're tinting stuff. Oh man, this is maybe coming out a little deeper than I want it, or a little. This is coming out a little. It's hitting all the recesses really nicely, but it's not really clinging on to the paint itself very well, which is okay. When you get something like this, just work it in as much as you can. Make sure you get all the recesses, and then grab yourself a... So if you have wash and it's reacting like this, it's totally okay. A good trick to employ is to grab a paper towel, grab your water, okay, wet down your paper towel just a smidge, right? It doesn't have to be a lot because we don't have a huge area that we're working in, okay? And then just dab. Okay, don't rub, right? Rubbing is going to remove paint, but if you dab, you can dab all of the wash away, but it'll stay in the recesses where we kind of want it. And then instead of, and because the wash isn't reacting the way we want to, but we got it in the recesses, we're still in pretty good shape. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put this wash right here in the recesses here, where it exited. And so what do we do now? If plan A didn't work, let's go to plan B. And plan B is going to be, we're going to glaze over some dark, right? We're going to take the glaze, we're going to take our dark tone, we're going to take like 2 drops of our dark tone, we're going to put it right here in the center. We're going to take our glaze medium, we're going to put like 2 drops of glaze medium right there. Then we're going to mix all this up, right? Just like we did for our mid-tone, but this time we're just going to glaze in over here. And I think this glaze medium is just making it really, really glossy. It's what it's feeling like. You can see, like, let's pick the glazed one. You can see where the paint itself is kind of like, it's not adhering, right? It's just kind of sitting on top, which means that there's not a lot of surface tension for the paint to go in. So all you have to do is just glaze down with your dark, right? So you can glaze brighter like we did, and then you can glaze back down with your dark tone. It's a little more of an advanced technique. I wasn't necessarily planning on showing you like how to do that, but it's really important that you don't get stuck on one technique if one technique isn't working. It's just better just to go with a technique that you know will also work, right? So if a wash doesn't work and you're trying to tint something, then take that darker color and just put the glaze where you want it. And we can do this multiple steps, right? We can let this dry. If this isn't dark enough, we can let it dry and then go back up here and glaze again. And then go back down here and glaze again. And then go back up here and glaze again. And if it's too bright, we can take the glaze and we can push it out, right? So what this means, for those of you that are like super interested in this, and I know there's like 3 people that are watching this that are like, oh, okay, I super get what you're saying. We can take this and we can wet blend this up, right? Just like I showed you. But we can also take the glaze and we can actually glaze all of this up, right? So So what does that actually mean? Oh. If you hate it, I call this houndstooth. Actually, this houndstooth is going to be prize support. Everything I paint is going to be prize support for the Gold Squadron podcast. So make sure you tune in during tournament days, and I am sure that you will see one of these auctioned or given away, auctioned off, whatever we're calling it. Okay, so what does this mean when we wet blended this up and then we glazed it down? Another way that we could do it is we could glaze all of this up. Oh, this is super thin. Glazes are supposed to be super thin, right? Which is the whole point. But maybe we can make it just a little bit thicker. Yeah, there we go. We can glaze all of this up, right? All of this dark up, and we can get a good blend with our silver via the glaze. And then we can take the darker glaze and start glazing that dark metal down this way, right? So we can take that dark metal, glaze it down, take this metal, glaze it down, and then eventually make this blend back up. So that's an alternate way you can do it. Is it better? Is it worse? It's not. It's just a different way of doing it. If you glaze, you're typically going to have much thinner coats. Right, so if this is too much of a so if you wind up painting a little too thick, practicing glazing might give you a better way of painting up. And you can see that I'm still just going back to it, right? The really problematic thing about blending with a brush is that there's just so much that you can do to make a blend better. That going back and glazing over and over and over and over again, like you can always refine your blend. But I promise that every painter who sees this, or every painter who looks at this, can tell the difference between an airbrush blend and a brush blend. And if you have a really nice brush blend, you will get a lot more cred than if you have than if you airbrush it. So, okay, I have no clue what you're saying. You keep saying glaze, and I'm like, Krispy Kreme? All right, so what I mean by glaze, for those of you that are just joining us, is taking a paint and adding this glaze medium, and what we're doing is we're creating a tint, right? So wet blending is taking two different paints, mixing them together, and creating a range, a tone range, right? So if we have white and black, we would have white, gray, black. Oh, maybe I should move this to where you can see it. We would have, so if we had this silver, right, and we had, take off this paint, and we have this black, right, by moving this in here and moving this in here, we have a range, right? So this is wet blending. White, we mix it, we get a good mid-range, okay? Glazing, by using the glaze medium, we're able to thin out the paint but still get an even coat. So glazing is taking this and painting it over and just giving everything a little bit of a tint. And if you give everything a little bit of a tint in the right places, you can make your brush strokes disappear to the point where you have a really nice thin coat, or a really nice even blend. So using the two in conjunction is definitely something that I do when I'm brush blending, and you should consider it for your stuff. As you keep working on stuff, you'll find where either A, you need to work, or B, where what I'm talking about has its limitations. So Oh man, my throat is getting mega silver. I'm liking the progress on this so far. Yeah, and I mean we haven't really been we've been just kind of talking about how this technique works, because the act of painting this is much less important for your guys' learning than it is to understand these two techniques, right? We talked about blending with an airbrush, right? Last week. We worked in with the dark, we worked in with the light, we kind of worked in our midtones, we kind of worked back and forth in order to get a nice blend. And you can see that the blend is, like the blends right here are pretty much perfect, right? They're nice gradients all the way up. When you're working with a brush, it's a little different, right? Because you can't make, well, I mean, someone can, but typically we can't make blends that are just perfect all the way up. So we have to work black, dark, and kind of fill in the gaps and start kind of doing all of that work that the airbrush, that we could do in the airbrush in 5 minutes, like do that work ourselves. So it's important but it's an important skill to know. So I think that unless anybody has something that is really, like, is it harder to blend with other types of paints, Citadel? I mean, no, they're all pretty much the same. Lou the Lunatic asked if it was harder to paint with other types of paints. No, it's the same. Like, all of this is the exact same. Like Vallejo paints, Citadel paints, all of them, they all work really similarly. There's some really high-end paints that if you really get into this, you might want to consider if you're like, I'm really into this blending thing. I'm totally in on it. I love blending with a brush. I want to work on it. Scale 75 makes paints that are built for this. They're built for blending. They're really good. You'll really like them. Let's see. But yeah, I mean, just pick some paints, go through this process. Some paints are easier to thin out. Some paints, as you thin them out, they break down faster. And it's just a matter of preference, right? Eventually, you're going to get to the point where you're like, man, I really prefer these types of paints, and for these reasons. Like I think I said on the first paint cast, the reason I use Vallejo paints is because they were on sale and I bought them for cheap. So when the Vallejo paints, when these paints run out, I will replace them with other paints that are on sale that I think, okay, these are adequate. So hopefully that answers your questions. Totally am into it. Cool. So, I mean, so if you guys want homework for this week, well, not homework. I mean, if you guys want painting practice for this week, I recommend taking a ship or taking a model, right? And doing this, blocking out those blends, putting in your midtones, block out everything, and start working on blending stuff in, okay? The smaller area that you work with to begin with, the easier your blending is going to be. Eventually, you're going to get so small that it gets really hard, right? But pick like a little spot, right? Like on the houndstooth, don't start with this big giant panel here, right? Start with this, right? Start with this. Oh, sorry. Start with this. Start with this. Don't start with this big giant panel, right? Do that second or third. And kind of work through that process. Work through the process of wet blending. Go back, watch the video, kind of watch how I'm kind of doing it, and really practice, right? Because just watching a video won't help you learn it. It'll help you understand what you should be doing, but until you are actually feeling how the paint works, you're not gonna get it. So, Johannes, nice, stopped in to say hi. Cool, man. So, if you guys want to work through that, definitely go onto our Discord. I think we're gonna wrap up here in just a few minutes, because I don't think I'm gonna have time to work through a whole nother blend with the time we have left. So we'll just end a little bit early tonight, like 10 minutes early. I could probably I'll give the full spiel again. So I appreciate you guys being here. You guys are awesome. if you guys weren't here, there'd be no reason for me to do this. So, and I really enjoy doing this. So I hope that you enjoy it too. Expect a video coming out later this week on this paint cast, and then expect a second bonus video kind of walking through all these blends. And that way people that are interested in seeing the process but aren't interested in like literally watching paint dry, then they can just kind of work through that. They can just watch it at warp speed, right? And then for those people who are interested in like seeing the process done another 1, 2, 3, 4 times, right? You'll be able to see my progress, and I'll be working through like live on my, well, not live, but I'll be working through and talking through kind of my issues, what I'm doing, how, like problems that I'm running into, that type of thing. Let's see. What else should we talk about? Oh, okay, yeah, no problem, Mega Silver. If you haven't already, make sure you follow Twitch. Following is up here. If you're super like me and you're really interested in the techniques that we're talking about, and you want to help support this channel, talk about subscribing, like click that subscribe button. If you're a Twitch Prime member, you get 1 free a month. You got to reuse it, so make sure every month you're kind of continuing to go hit that subscribe button. If you just want to give, it's $5 a week, right? I promise you that that 1, I'm available, and 2, anytime that you're gonna go learn wet blending, you're gonna spend much more money on taking a class learning wet blending than you are on $5 a month for me at 7 hours a week teaching you all these techniques. So keep that in mind. In addition, you get all the other crazy Gold Squadron stuff, right? You get the podcast on Tuesday, and you get game nights on Wednesday, and then you get every major tournament in the U.S. I mean, it's freaking crazy. So just go. So if you're interested in subscribing at the actual tier 1 level, you know, it's $5. You get a lot of stuff for that $5. Not that we're going away, but your dollars do help, and we appreciate that. And then I'm going to spin this around so we can like see the actual blend instead of the actual blend we worked on, instead of the not blend we worked on. YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the like on my on the video. I appreciate you. Do you have a preference for how you, a quick question from 14 I4 Starfighter? Oh, Initiative 4 Starfighter? I don't know. Do you have a preference on how you blend, airbrush or regular brush? Airbrushing's faster. If you have, I mean, realistically, especially for X-Wing, if you're going to blend, you should learn how to blend with a brush so you know how. And then most of your blending is going to be done with an airbrush because it's cleaner, it's easier. So you saw us blending with an airbrush here, right? Saw us blending with an airbrush here, here, right? And look how nice these blends are. They're so good. They're so thin. We kind of got some silver on our blends there. We might have to go back and fix those, but that's okay. That's no big deal. But this is good. But when we're fixing these, right, I'm going to go back and fix these with a brush, and I have to know how to blend this back in without making this a problem. So probably you're going to use an airbrush if you have the opportunity or you have the capability, but definitely don't discount the need to know how to do stuff with a brush. So yeah, hit that like. So if you're on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you go on to our Discord. And the Discord should be in the notes of pretty much every video, or scroll down on the Gold Squadron Twitch thing and you'll see the Discord button. Join our Discord. We have a whole section for painting. Put your work in progress, put your finished ships in there. We love looking at that stuff. If you want to get some feedback on your ships, I and other really good painters will be happy to give you feedback. What else? I think that might actually be all that we have. So guys, I appreciate y'all coming in, and yeah, I will see you later. Gold Squadron